Hello human beings, PowerGamer here. Sorry if everything sounds all weird and echoey. I ate one of these things because I thought they were jelly beans, but it turns out they're actually some sort of weird ancient rock that carry a mystical curse that makes everything look and sound like this. So yeah, not entirely sure how I'm supposed to deal with that, but maybe playing an Uncharted game for the first time in ages will help me fix this issue.
Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. I'm sure there's another video game I could very easily reference with that subtitle, but I'm not going to do that. The second entry in Naughty Dog's treasure hunting quadrilogy, Uncharted 2 is often considered the best of the series, and despite that, I have next to no knowledge of its contents, but I'm sure everyone can't be lying, right? What possible benefit would people have to spreading around misinformation besides money, fame, power, and/or attention? The game was first unveiled in December 2008 via Game Informer magazine, and several teaser trailers were released throughout the following months showing Nathan Drake in some pretty intense situations. Development lasted over a 22-month period, and apparently 6 of those months were spent in pre-production. The game had 3 head writers, Amy Hennig, Neil Druckmann, and Josh Schur, and much of the story took inspiration from explorer Marco Polo, with the game even opening with a quote from him. Naughty Dog wanted to push the game's graphical engine to its limits, so the environments were made much more realistic than they were in the first game, the animations were much more complex, and it utilized motion capture in much more intricate ways. While the first game already had a massive engine, the second game used a new, revamped version that was even more powerful. For the voice actors, Nolan North, Emily Rose, and Richard McGonigal reprised their roles as Nate, Elena, and Sully respectively, but new to the series was Claudia Black, who would end up becoming a staple for future games. Uncharted 2 was released for the PS3 on October 13th, 2009, where it did even better than the first one did. It sold over 6 million copies, which was a big step over the first game's 4 million, and it was universally acclaimed, with many people declaring it one of, if not the best PS3 game ever. And it won a bunch of awards from various gaming media outlets, including Game of the Year from several places. And like I said, that praise hasn't dwindled with time in the slightest. I often see this game regarded as the best in the series, aside from maybe a couple of people who would say 4 is the best, but even then, that number of people isn't very big. And much like the first game, it was included in the Nathan Drake collection for the PS4 in 2015, which is how I'll be playing it today.
It has been way too long since I did the first Uncharted game, and since this seems to be the fan favorite entry in the series, I'm looking forward to finally returning to this collection, even if it doesn't actually end up helping me lift this curse.
I gotta say, the game has one hell of an opening, since we find our pal Nathan Drake waking up covered in his own blood in a train car that is currently dangling off the side of a cliff. And the very first thing you do is climb your way out of it as it falls apart and slowly inches further and further off the edge. This is freaking awesome. Once you get up the cliff, we flash back to 4 months earlier. Nate was in some tropical resort when he's approached by this guy named Harry Flynn. Flynn tells him he has a buyer willing to pay them a huge amount of cash if they steal something from the Istanbul Palace Museum. Nate is hesitant at first. Flynn introduces him to his colleague, Chloe Fraser, and says they're after a Mongolian oil lamp. Nate still thinks this is a crazy idea, but Flynn then shows him a journal entry written by Marco Polo that hints towards what happened to his missing fleet of ships. Love it when a game gives you a real-life history lesson. Realizing there must be a connection, all 3 of them agree to go get the lamp and not actually give it to their buyer.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Never say that again.
We jump back to Nate on the cliff, have to trek through the snow, and kill a few guys before he passes out. Flashback again, where Chloe confronts Nate in a hotel, saying that they'll run off together when this is over. Back to the train again, and Nate pulls out this dagger. Flashback number 3, where they actually perform the heist to steal the oil lamp, and short answer is it goes well, until it doesn't. Nate breaks open the lamp to find a seemingly blank piece of paper. He gathers up these blue stones and burns them, allowing the light to illuminate the paper, revealing a map. They find the location of the ships is off the coast of Borneo, and the fleet crashed because they carried the treasure of Shambhala, and by extension, the curse of the Chintamani. This hints towards some sort of treasure called the Chintamani Stone, but Flynn betrays Nate and runs off, causing him to get arrested. 3 months later, he's bailed out by Sully, as well as Chloe. They reveal that Flynn and crew found the ships near Borneo, but they haven't found the stone yet. We also find out that Flynn is working for a man named Lazarevich. The Chintamani Stone was said to be a jewel that could grant people wishes, and it lies in the ancient kingdom of Shambhala. Since it could be worth a fortune, the trio hatches a plan to steal Lazarevich's notes and find the stone before he does. The story is a big step up from last time. It's still a similar premise of trying to find an ancient treasure with mystical powers and preventing it from falling into the hands of an evil nutcase, but the scale is a lot bigger, which makes it more interesting. We have both a prominent villain and a prominent henchman, as opposed to last time where the henchman did nothing until the very end of the game, which is a nice bonus. Chloe is a pretty fun new character, since she acts as a double agent for Nate and Lazarevich, and best of all, we're traveling to several places across the whole world, as opposed to the whole game taking place on one island, which gives us a great variety in locations. Plus, the writing is just as good as last time, if not better, since we have more characters to work with.
The story isn't the only step up from the first game. Just about every aspect of the gameplay is either kept in check, expanded upon, or dramatically improved.
Once again, the game shifts between exploration sequences with a focus on puzzles and platforming, and action sequences where you shoot a bunch of enemies. As previously stated, we have a lot of different areas to explore in this game, which leads to a much bigger variety in puzzles. Before it was mostly just temples and caves, but here we got places like modern buildings, mountains, and small villages, just to name a few. Progression still largely revolves around jumping and climbing, but it feels a lot more varied since the scenery is constantly changing and the more distinct puzzles stick out a lot more. The level design is a lot more helpful in pointing you in the right direction, especially since it doesn't go dark as often, but if you still get stuck for a decent amount of time, the game will give you a hint if you push up on the D-pad, which is really nice, and the presentation helps in making things feel even bigger in scale. The music and voice acting are on par with before, and the graphics are even better, which isn't as noticeable with the remaster, but whatever. Plus we get even more unique camera angles, which can lead to some really cool shots, especially when they play with stuff in the foreground and background, and I like how the longer jumps Nate has to make feel a lot closer with more fluid animations. But the action sequences have been expanded even more so. You have access to all the same types of weapons you had in the first game, plus a great selection of new ones, like super strong pistols with less ammo, making it feel like a small shotgun, a semi-automatic with a sniper feature, making it more accurate, though you can only shoot it in bursts, a crossbow, which is the slowest weapon in the game, but it one-shots almost anything, and the extremely rare Gatling gun. That's not actually helpful since it's slow as hell to shoot, hard to aim, and you're completely defenseless when using it. Plus there's a handful of extra accessories you can get, like riot shields, which protect you, though you can only use small weapons when holding it, and propane tanks, which you can throw and shoot to blow them up. Just make sure you know how to actually aim these things or you'll end up dead in seconds. But if you're not eager to shoot every enemy in sight, this game has a bit more of an emphasis on stealth. Every once in a while you're put in a sequence where you can sneak around to take out enemies more quietly. If you sneak up on an enemy without them spotting you, you can take them out instantly. And I love the variety these kills have, since they range from snapping their necks to just throwing them off the side of a platform or train, which is hilarious. The only downside is that once you're spotted, it's literally impossible to hide again, so things just go back to shooting everything that moves. But the stealth stuff isn't a bad way to add some variety. The melee combat isn't as prominent as before, but I don't mind since it's not really needed. The brutal takedowns have been removed, though you can parry and dodge enemies if they grab you, which happens more often than not. This game really knows how to keep the pace moving, and another way that helps is that the quick time events have been mostly removed. There's still a couple, but they're more like mashing a certain button as fast as possible instead of just pushing the button once or else you die.
This game really feels like an upgraded version of the first one in just about every way, including the fact that you're not actually alone for most of the adventure.
At many points of the game, Nate will have one or two rotating companions to help him out in both the exploration and the combat. They'll provide some extra gunfire, which can really help you get out of a tight situation if you're cornered or hurt. Hell, sometimes they'll even take out the final enemy of the encounter, which is always really funny to me. But during exploration, they can do things like help you push something heavy, or you'll need to give them a boost to reach a higher area so they can knock down a ladder or try to murder Nate with a box. I really like the companions since they can add some good variety and help, and they never feel like they're in your way. Well, aside from this one part where Chloe knocked me into a river, but don't worry, I got her back later. Like in the last game, there's a bunch of treasures you can collect to give you bonuses like new skins. Every once in a while, the game will shake things up, like throwing in a vehicle section, a chase sequence, a turret, or just a unique place you need to shoot enemies from. And much like the first game, there was an online multiplayer feature that wasn't included in the Nathan Drake collection. In terms of issues with the game, all I can really think of is that there are some parts that can be a little overwhelming with enemies. This glitch happened where Nate was hanging off of thin air, but that was honestly pretty funny. I highly recommend turning on the subtitles, since there are some moments where it's literally impossible to hear what the characters are saying during the gameplay, and some chapters can go on a little too long. Oh yeah, like the first game, it's split into chapters, and there's 26 as opposed to 22. This game is also a lot longer than the first one was. It will last around 10 hours, unlike the first game, which is closer to 7, so I guess we'll get back into the story. Well, the first proper gameplay sequence is infiltrating the museum. You gotta make your way through the sewers to get inside, sneak past the guards, take out these guys with tranquilizer guns that you never use again, which is a bit of a missed opportunity if you ask me, and get inside this tower. Here, Flynn betrays Nate and sets off the alarm, so you need to run from all these guards. Nate tries to get back through the sewers, but that doesn't go over very well. 3 months and one prison conversation later, Nate, Sully, and Chloe set off for Borneo to find Lazarevich's camp. Chloe graciously left some explosives lying around, so you need to kill enemies and activate them. Eventually, they find the camp and spot Flynn, along with Lazarevich, who kills one of the goons for stealing stuff. Sully detonates the explosives, causing everyone to leave, but you still need to take out some foes. Bust your way in, and Nate finds the notes, which reveal that Marco Polo left the stone behind in Shambhala, and apparently no bodies have been found despite the shipwrecks. We've got company, though, so there's another shootout with Sully acting as backup. Nate and Sully meet up with Chloe at the top of a mountain and find the remnants of the crew inside this cave. After poking around, Nate finds the dagger we saw him holding in the train, and a map that says the entrance to Shambhala lies beneath a temple in Nepal. But outside, Flynn shows up, and Chloe has to act like she's on his side. They're forced to hand over the map, but Flynn goes in the cave, allowing them to escape. Chloe says she'll meet Nate in Nepal, Sully says he's had enough, and Nate jumps off a cliff with Sully following suit. So Sully takes a well-deserved vacation while Nate heads to Nepal, which is currently undergoing a civil war. After running from a truck and taking out way more soldiers than necessary, Nate finds Chloe and spots a symbol on the dagger, which might lead to the temple. So they need to get a better view of the city. Trek through more carnage and climb up this hotel, which requires some elevator maintenance. On the roof, they find the right temple and head over, but not without taking a nice dip in the pool.
Hey, check it out. Marco.
Really?
Come on.
No.
Marco.
Hello.
Fish out of water.
You are so unprofessional.
People just have no sense of whimsy.
Lazarevich is alerted to Drake's presence, so you have to run from a helicopter across these rooftops while fighting enemies and eventually blast it with a rocket launcher, which is awesome. Nate eventually makes his way to the ground where he comes across Elena, alongside this guy named Jeff, who are doing a report on Lazarevich since he's a war criminal that's killed millions, unlike Drake, who's only killed hundreds. But then Chloe shows up to cause some unwanted tension. Chloe doesn't want to bring them along, but Nate insists and they're attacked, so all four of them have to fend off some foes. And by that I mean I do most of the work while the others occasionally help. After that, you gotta cross a river, do some more fighting, and eventually find the temple. Nate tells Elena about the Chintamani stone, which Chloe isn't a fan of, so when they head inside, Chloe insists that Elena and Jeff stay back at the entrance. Inside the temple, you gotta use Nate's notebook to solve the statue puzzle, which is cool, go into the catacombs where you're killed by a spike trap unless you shoot this wheel, and eventually find this room where you gotta redirect light beams.
Hey, whatever you do, don't fall.
Hey, you're not the boss of me. Once all the beams are in place, you can go down here. Nate uses the dagger to activate this highly interactive map, giving them the location of Shambhala. They almost kiss, but then they hear a bang from upstairs, which can only mean Elena and Jeff are up to something. Oh, or the enemies have invaded. Escape the temple, and outside we find Jeff has been shot. Chloe says to leave him behind, but Nate and Elena refuse, so you have to run through a gauntlet of enemies while carrying Jeff on your shoulder, limiting your movement. Eventually they get caught by Flynn in this building, so Chloe is escorted out, and Nate and Lazarevich finally meet. Lazarevich kills Jeff, which is a shame since he had only one day until retirement. Flynn steals the map, and after some arguing, Nate and Elena escape. Run away as they try to gun you down, and then they hide in this building. Nate says he has to find Chloe and remembers they mentioned something about a train. Hey, that sounds familiar. So you gotta shoot enemies while hanging from a sign with help from Elena and go past this water tower. They spot Chloe being loaded onto the train, so Nate sneaks down to find her while Elena steals a 4x4. Unfortunately, the train takes off during another shootout, so they need to chase after it. Nate hitches a ride and you need to make your way up the train while killing enemies and jumping across cars, even needing to hang off the side to avoid incoming signs.
Wait a minute, this looks familiar. Oh my god, Uncharted 2 ripped off the Polar Express game! God, I cannot believe Naughty Dog would do something like that.
After enough running, you have another helicopter chase, go through a tunnel, fight this dude with a Gatling gun, and then use a turret to take out the helicopter. Make sure you shoot the missiles that it fires at you. After that, there's a mini-boss fight against this guy who takes forever to kill. Then Nate finally finds Chloe, but she's not happy to see him since she feels like he prioritized the others over her. But then Flynn shoots Nate in the stomach, causing him to stumble his way through the next car. He then shoots the propane tanks, causing his car to go flying off the rails, leading to where we found him at the beginning of the game. And you need to climb your way out of the train again, which I find kinda ridiculous since, well, we already did this. Only difference is this time we get Nate ranting to himself. Then we just cut right to him holding the dagger and fight off more enemies. Nate stumbles his way through the snow and collapses where he's found by this guy. He then wakes up in a Tibetan village where the people have tended to him. In another hut, he finds Elena and meets this guy named Carl Schaefer, who actually speaks English. Schaefer says he came here 70 years ago as part of another expedition into Tibet to find the Chintamani stone, and the dagger turns out to be the key to Shambhala. Nate says he's done with all this, but Schaefer tells him he needs to find the stone and destroy it so Lazarevich doesn't get his hands on it. He's still hesitant, so Schaefer tells him to go find the remnants of his old expedition with this guy named Tenzin. Tenzin leads him into the mountains, and there's a bit of a language barrier, but at least one of them can overcome that, go through this icy cave, and eventually they're both attacked by this giant goat monster. You can't kill this thing, but you can shoot it over and over again until it eventually runs off. But don't let it catch you or you'll wish you stayed in Istanbul. After more climbing, you find another temple with a bunch of switches that trigger mechanical platforms. There's a lot of moving pieces to the section, which can be confusing, but also pretty cool. In the center, they find people left over from Schaefer's expedition, as well as more remnants of the stone. Turns out these guys were Nazis, and Schaefer killed them to prevent them from going crazy. Activate this elevator to escape, but more goat beasts show up, so you gotta fend them off until it reaches the bottom. Outside, they see the village being invaded by guess who, and when they get back, Elena says they took Schaefer. This part is tricky since there's enemies everywhere and you can easily get overwhelmed. Things only get worse when a freaking tank shows up, and you need to use these RPGs to shoot it as it slowly moves through the village, but each one only gives you one shot, so it takes a while. Especially since the enemies can just as easily shoot you with them. Once it's destroyed, Nate hops in this truck with Elena and they chase after Schaefer. This results in you having to jump between trucks while taking out enemies, eventually hijacking the turret, so that helps. Nate returns to Elena only for them to get shot with a rocket and fall off a cliff that they don't actually go down.
How the hell did they not go off the edge?
They spot Schaefer being taken into this monastery, so it's time for another infiltration. This is easily the most annoying part of the game. It doesn't start out that bad, but you eventually reach a point where there's a turret on one side of you and a sniper on the other. So no matter what direction you go in, you can die instantly. The turret is obviously preferable since it can help you more, but if you make a slight mistake, the sniper just obliterates you. And there's a ton of enemies in this section that show up before you get a checkpoint, so if you die, the whole thing restarts. I seriously spent 13 minutes on this one bunch of enemies. After that, you do some wall climbing and have to sneak into the tower. Take out the guards, deal with a giant legion of snipers, and then fend off an invading army to finally cross this bridge that falls apart under you. Inside the monastery itself, you gotta take out more soldiers and go in here, where Nate and Elena find Schaefer mortally wounded. He says that Lazarevich took the dagger and this monastery holds the entrance to Shambhala, and with his final breath, he once again tells Nate to destroy the stone. Elena tells Nate to go get the dagger back while she tries to find the entrance. Make your way through the tower fighting more guys, including ones with Gatling guns, and find out those goat monsters are attacking. Once you reach this tower, we see Lazarevich getting fed up with Flynn, but when they leave, Nate is able to get the dagger back from Chloe in a not-so-friendly manner. You gotta use the notebook again to match up these objects with pictures on the wall, and then spin these to reveal the correct symbol. This activates this thing, and when Nate puts the dagger in, a door opens and he spots the entrance, so he contacts Elena. After wiping out more guards, Nate and Elena open these stairs and head down to the entrance. But when they open it up, they get busted, and Nate tries to reason with Lazarevich, but oh yeah, he's a war criminal that doesn't care who dies as long as it's not him. He threatens to kill both Elena and Chloe, but Nate does what he wants and opens up the door. This large cave is revealed, so he forces Nate and Flynn to find a way across. So you need to do just that, which is another pretty cool section. Eventually we have our third notebook puzzle, which is more symbol matching, but then more goat monsters show up and we have another rumble with them. If you survive long enough, Lazarevich kills them and reveals they're not actually monsters, they're zombie people in costumes meant to scare off trespassers. Flynn wants to kill Nate, but Lazarevich wants to let him see Shambhala because he's an idiot. If you have the opportunity to kill the hero, you kill them right there, because otherwise they can easily escape. The gates to Shambhala is opened, and it looks beautiful. But then they're attacked by these natives, allowing Nate, Elena, and Chloe to escape. Who could have seen this coming, besides everyone with more than 2 functioning brain cells? You gotta run from both the soldiers and the natives, which includes riding around on this falling platform. Cool. After that, they find this place, and Chloe wants to leave, but Nate insists on destroying the stone. They argue for a bit, and eventually she concedes, but then they're attacked by more natives. After that, they find this weird blue sap that explodes when shot. Search around some more, and eventually you spot this gate that won't open. Then you're interrupted by another giant wave of enemies. Climb up these blocks that blend in with the wall to grab this chain and open the gate. Make your way down the stream, and eventually reach the room where the soldiers and natives are fighting again. Now, the logical solution is to just hide and let them kill each other, but sadly Elena and Chloe don't see it that way as they just provoke them by shooting. Once that's taken care of, they finally reach the Chintamani stone, but Nate says something's not right. He realizes that it's not a sapphire, it's an amber, fossilized sap from the Tree of Life. Then Flynn shows up covered in blood and says that Lazarevich beat them to it. Elena tries to bargain with him and he pulls a grenade on her, so you gotta cross another bridge with Chloe carrying Elena on her back. Hooray for character development! They reach the entrance, but Nate says he has to go back for the stone since it can make Lazarevich and his army unstoppable. He finds them in the center and Lazarevich drinks from this water which heals his wounds. Nate tries to blow him up, but that doesn't work, and the final showdown occurs, which is thankfully much better than the ending of the last game. Shooting Lazarevich doesn't do anything, so you need to run away from him while also trying to lure him to these sap globs. Then shoot them when he's standing near them to damage him while he tries to shoot you or grab you. It's intense with how enclosed the place is, so you really need to stay on your toes, and it's honestly pretty fun, if also fairly challenging. After enough blows, Lazarevich says that Drake is no different than him, since he's also killed a bunch of men, so Nate proves him wrong by not killing him, and instead leaving him to be killed by these guys, which is honestly hilarious. But the game's not done yet, as Nate has to escape the temple as it comes crumbling down around him. He finds Chloe, who's attacked by another native, you shoot him before you all fall off the cliff, and then they carry Elena out as the place is destroyed. Back in the village, they mourn the death of Schaefer, and Chloe tells Nate to tell Elena how he feels about her before leaving. Nate has some banter with Elena, who's feeling better, and the returning Sully, who goes to find Chloe. Nate and Elena share a kiss and debate how scared he was that she was gonna die before our story comes to a close.
What do you know? I guess it worked. Uncharted 2 is an amazing sequel. It takes just about everything that worked from the first game and improves on it tenfold from both the story and gameplay perspective. If the first one didn't grab you, I am fairly confident this one will, because it is fantastic. And hey, it's all this weird curse issue for me, so that's nice. Wait a minute, these things are jelly beans, they just expired 20 years ago.